Before borders were drawn, before flags told us who we were, before nations decided where we belonged, there was a world without countries. And if you stay until the end of this video, you'll understand why modern civilization could only exist by destroying that world. For most of human history, borders did not exist. There were no lines on the ground, no checkpoints, no passports, and no idea that land could belong to a distant authority. The earth was not divided into nations. It was experienced as a living system. People identified themselves through rivers, mountains, forests, and seasons. A valley was not foreign territory. A river was not a boundary. These were shared spaces that connected communities, rather than separating them. Movement was natural and necessary. Humans followed animals, weather patterns, fertile soil, and water sources. Migration was not a political act, it was survival. This freedom of movement created resilience. When one region suffered drought, people moved. When resources were scarce, communities cooperated. Conflict existed, but it was local, negotiated, and limited. There was no concept of defending an abstract line with violence. The idea that crossing land could make someone illegal would have been incomprehensible. The world before nations was not disorganized, it was adaptive. It was not empty, it was alive. And it functioned without borders for tens of thousands of years. In the absence of nations, identity was deeply human. People did not define themselves through documents, flags, or political systems. Identity came from relationships, family, kinship, shared history, and responsibility to land and community. A person could belong to multiple groups at once. Identity was layered, flexible, and contextual. It changed throughout life. You were a child of your parents, a member of a clan, a guardian of land, and a participant in rituals, all at the same time. Belonging was inclusive rather than exclusive. It did not depend on borders, but on participation and contribution. If you lived with a group, respected its customs, and shared its responsibilities, you belonged. This form of identity reduced large-scale conflict. There was no need to defend an abstract national identity. Loyalty was personal and local. Disputes were resolved through relationships rather than ideology. Modern nationalism often assumes strong identity requires strict boundaries. History shows the opposite. Without centralized governments or nation-states, societies relied on social bonds, tradition, and shared accountability. Leadership existed, but it was rarely permanent or absolute. Leaders emerged through experience, wisdom, and trust, not inheritance or force. Councils were common. Elders advised. Decisions were debated openly. Authority could be challenged, and leaders could be removed. Power was visible and close, not distant and abstract. Justice focused on restoration rather than punishment. The goal was not to isolate individuals from society, but to repair relationships. Social cohesion mattered more than control. These systems worked because people were directly accountable to one another. There was no distant capital issuing laws to people it would never meet. Authority was human, not bureaucratic. If this way of living feels unfamiliar today, it's because history rarely teaches that functioning societies once existed without states. And if understanding this changes how you see the world, liking the video and subscribing helps keep these long-form explorations alive. Nations did not appear overnight. They emerged gradually as populations grew and power became centralized. Leaders discovered that controlling land required defining it. Controlling people required fixing them in place. Borders were drawn not to reflect culture or reality, but to enforce authority. Once land was divided, it could be taxed. Once people were categorized, they could be governed. Once movement was restricted, obedience could be demanded. What had once been fluid became rigid. What had once been shared became owned. What had once been negotiated became enforced by violence. Nations were not a natural evolution of humanity. They were a strategic invention designed to concentrate power. Perhaps the greatest loss brought by nations was the loss of free movement. For thousands of years, people moved in response to nature. Suddenly, movement required permission. Borders criminalized behaviors that had existed forever. People who followed ancestral routes were now labeled outsiders. Communities that had always interacted were separated overnight. Movement became regulated. Identity became territorial. Belonging became conditional. The planet did not change, but humanity's relationship with it did. The world became smaller, not physically, but politically. Freedom was no longer a right. It became a privilege. Nations brought order, infrastructure, and large-scale coordination. Roads, cities, systems of law, and centralized organization became possible. But this progress came at a cost rarely discussed. Languages disappeared as standardized identities replaced local ones. Cultures fractured as borders divided communities. Relationships with land shifted from stewardship to extraction. What was gained in efficiency was lost in humanity. The old world was not perfect, but it was sustainable, and sustainability was sacrificed for control. A world without nations could not support empires. Empires require borders, taxation, standing armies, and controlled populations. They require fixed identities and enforced loyalty. The old world, fluid, cooperative, decentralized, stood in direct opposition to imperial power. It did not collapse because it failed. It was destroyed because it could not be controlled. To justify this destruction, history reframed it as progress. Colonization became civilization. Borders became order. Control became security. But beneath this narrative lies a simple truth. The old world had to disappear so the new one could seem inevitable. Despite colonization and forced assimilation, knowledge of the pre-national world survived. Indigenous communities preserved ways of thinking about land, identity, and cooperation. This knowledge is not ancient nostalgia. It is practical wisdom. It offers solutions to modern crises, environmental collapse, social fragmentation, and endless conflict. Modern science is now rediscovering what these societies already knew. Sustainability requires balance, not domination. The future may depend on remembering what the past already solved. The question is not whether humanity once lived without nations. History proves it did. The real question is whether modern society can imagine alternatives, whether borders are truly inevitable or simply familiar, whether control is the only way to organize humanity. The past proves another world was possible. The future may demand we reconsider it. The world before nations was not primitive, weak, or chaotic. It was different, and difference threatened power. Nations did not replace chaos. They replaced freedom. History rarely admits this because doing so would force us to question what we consider inevitable today. And that question remains unanswered. Thank you for watching until the end. Write in the comments which country you're watching from. I'll thank you personally in the next video. Like, subscribe, and we'll continue exploring the histories the world forgot.